All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, everyone. Thanks for coming today. All right, so this is the session on the moving on vouchers that IHG is offering through our HDB program. So if that's not what you're here for, you're in the wrong session. My name is Charles Holowitz. I'm the director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program at IHGA. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. So just to kind of take up the presentation, for those of you who are not familiar with moving on as a concept, these vouchers are intended for individuals who have been living in PSH for a while and no longer require those full wraparound on-site supportive services and also want to move. So it's not for individuals that you're trying to push out the door. It's folks who have said, you know, I'm looking to move. And the goal of it is to open up those PSH units for other households that need that full permanent supportive housing. So with that in mind, a few years ago, we decided to add into our administrative plan for housing choice vouchers a limited preference for 50 of these referrals each year from continuum of care PSH projects. This was meant to kind of mirror what we have with PSH projects that have project-based vouchers. Within the PVV program, it is a federal requirement that anyone who has been living in the property for a year be offered the opportunity to move to a tenant-based voucher. So we said, you know, across our PSH portfolio in the state, we want our residents to have the same opportunity regardless if they are receiving a project-based voucher or a COC rental assistance unit. So we wanted to make sure that we had folks in COC rental assistance have the same opportunity to move on if that's what they desire. All right, so quick generator day, we'll start with introducing the moving on program, how to identify appropriate referrals, and then we'll kind of get into the technical, what the referral packet looks like, where it needs to go to, you know, the jurisdictions by BHAs across the state, and then there's some type of question and answer at the end. All right, so as I already kind of gave summary on COC, only thing to add is because project-based vouchers has the 1 year requirement, is the same for these moving on vouchers. The resident must have lived in the property for at least 1 year before this is available to them. Also, just to make sure that they have the full initial lease term. But that doesn't necessarily mean that someone that's lived there in 1 year is an appropriate referral. We'll get into that in a little bit. But just how to ensure that you're identifying appropriate referrals. All right, so currently, our item plan is just written that there's 50 moving on referrals each year available, and those are on first come, first serve. This has been available for a couple of years now. We're kind of relaunching it, getting folks to be more aware of this referral program. We have not previously ever ran out of those 50 referrals, but understanding that as CSC properties become more aware of it, we might have, you know, not have a referral for everyone each year. And we may, if they become highly demanded and we're running out each year, reevaluate if we need more referrals available, or if we need to prioritize them, you know, regionally across the state or something to ensure that, you know, one property isn't, or one organization isn't taking all of those referrals, and that both properties have equal opportunity through it. And then additionally, you know, we do allow for additional referrals beyond the initial 50, but that is only in cases where, you know, we really need to get someone out of that PSH property because there's an issue at the property and there's a safety risk. And we would look at those on a case by case basis if we were at our full 50 referral limit. All right, so moving on vouchers can only be accessed by the COC PSH projects. And they have some of the following eligibility requirements. The property management company at the COC project must commit to allowing that household to stay in the unit until they have identified a new unit with their voucher. So, if their lease is coming up and the goal is for them to be moved out by the end of their lease term, you would still need to commit to saying you're gonna allow them to stay there until they've actually identified and moved into that new unit. We just want to ensure that, no one is becoming homeless again in our housing unstable because, they refer to this voucher, then their lease ended, and as we know, tenant-based vouchers, like sometimes it can be hard to find a landlord, and it takes a few months. And additionally, because of that, there are some expectations about when that referral gets to us, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We want it in advance of when their lease end date is, so we can ensure we give them enough time to find a new unit with that voucher. But additionally, the two requirements for all Section 8 programs is that the household must not be subject to the National Sex Offender Registry, and the household can never have been convicted of manufacturing methamphetamine and federally assisted housing. And then also the income limit of Section 8, which is the household is below the income limit of 50% AMI. And that's for the county they would like to utilize their voucher in. So if they are PSH units in one county, but they are hoping to actually move to the neighboring county or something, you would need to look at that AMI level for the county that they are trying to move into. And they can vary quite a bit, region by region of the state. So in addition to PSH units, we also have some limited eligibility for participants who are in IHDA's Housing First program. As I mentioned, the goal of this program is for PSH participants who are at a stage in their residency where they are ready to move on and want to move on to the tenant-based voucher and out of the PSH unit. We also understand there's a need in some other Housing First and Rapid Housing programs where perhaps, the grantee has been working with the household closely and, just they're going to need some additional rental assistance to continue to be stably housed after their rental assistance term with Housing First or Rapid Housing. What we don't want this to become is that, Housing First is now a transitional housing program. The plan is just to move them into moving on after, we want to ensure our grantees are still following the model of Housing First and Rapid Housing and trying to prepare their participants in those programs for independent, to be independently housed at the end of their rental assistance term. There is some guidance that Victoria and Zach have sent out to Housing First grantees, or have you sent that out yet, Victoria? Yeah, that's been sent out to Housing First grantees. And if a Housing First grantee identifies a household that they want to report moving on, there's some additional documentation they'll need to submit, and they'll have to initially submit that to Zach and Victoria prior to submitting it to our HDB team. Zach and Victoria will approve the household for referral to the moving on voucher. And that documentation is really focused on ensuring that the grantee has done everything they can to prepare that family to live independently. And, it's evident that they're just going to need ongoing rental assistance to remain stably housed. So, she'll be asking to make sure that they've been connected to mainstream benefits, SSI or SSDI determination letter, whether that's a denial or an award letter, staff benefits, et cetera, just making sure they've been connected to what resources they are eligible for. And additionally, for Rapid Housing, guidance will be coming soon from that. Rachel and her team are working on that. But the goal is for it to be similar to the Housing First program. So we're looking to make sure that Rapid Housing grantees are doing everything they can to stick to the goals of the Rapid Housing program. And that, this should not be part of the assistance plan when they enter into Rapid Housing. It should be perhaps that, a few months with their rental assistance is going to expire. We realize that they're going to need ongoing assistance to remain stably housed. And at that point, documenting everything that you've done to connect them to mainstream benefits and ensure that they, but the reality is that they're going to need ongoing rental assistance and they may be appropriate referral. One thing about the Rapid Housing First policy, currently, goal of the program is mainly intended for those PSH units because we want to be opening up those PSH units for other households. So if we start to see that too many of the referrals are being taken by Housing First and Rapid Housing participants and not by PSH participants, then maybe we evaluate that criteria some. That will annually, our HCD administrative plan is published January 1st each, or goes into effect January 1st each year. So each year when we're drafting our admin plan for the next year, we'll be looking at what percentage of referrals are coming from Rapid Housing, from PSH, from Moving On, or from Housing First, and ensuring that our policy is such that the majority of those referrals are coming from COC, PSH units, so that we're opening up more PSH units for families coming off the quarantine entry. Before I get into the referral process, is there any questions so far? Yes.
Rapid housing is that your like the housing first and it's 20 months.
Yeah, like I said, Rachel and her team are working on that guidance, so it should be published within the next few weeks. But it will be similar. I don't know if it's gonna be exactly 20 months. And actually, Victoria, Housing First is 20 months, or did we move it to?
Yeah, so they have to be housed for 20 months, at which point you make the referral, and then if they qualify for the voucher, they can use it after their assistance at the end of 2020.
Thanks. Yeah.
So is this for anybody in the household or just only for any school?
It would be for the entire household. So typically the household, there are unique situations. I would say reach out to us about the situation. For example, we just had a situation where the head of the household had passed away, and it made sense for the other two members to still be referred for the Moving On voucher. So there could be situations like that where a household could be referred without that head of household.
The burial receipt is what I email about the voucher going property-based incentives. I think we personally that it was the that have some rules. So is this a different program?
Yeah, so that's for property-based vouchers. This is specific to COC PSH units.
Okay.
So there's a little bit more flexibility because it's a new referral versus just transferring voucher type. But yeah, it's just for COC PSH, not for the property-based vouchers. Are there any other questions? All right, so the other referral process. For first, the property manager or service provider would identify a tenant who would like to move on. As I mentioned, they shouldn't be pushing tenants out. Typically, there should be something that the tenant brings up first, or perhaps even in re-examination, you just mention them that this is an option, but make sure that they're making that decision and they're not pressured into that decision. And then at that point, once the tenant has identified that they would like to move to a tenant-based voucher, and also during that conversation with the tenant, make sure you're preparing them, you're making sure they understand what services may not be available to them anymore when they transfer, and what barriers they may have finding tenant-based voucher. I don't want to discourage them from moving to tenant-based voucher, but make sure that you're preparing them for the reality of private landlords have additional screening criteria that may make it difficult to find housing, et cetera. But once you have identified a tenant who would like to move on, at that point, you would start working with them to complete and submit the referral packet. Our referral packet for this program is very similar to all our other referral packets. So if you have ever made a referral for EHB or batch or our mainstream voucher, it's essentially the same referral packet. There's basic household information, income information, and then you'll need to provide that supporting documentation for the income, as well as the tenant's birth certificate, social security card, all the usual stuff they are used to providing for rental assistance programs. The referral packet can be submitted to HDA at section 8 NIGA.in.gov. And then if the tenant is wanting to live outside of IGA's jurisdiction, then for those of you not familiar with IGA's voucher program, we cover every part of the state that does not have a local public housing authority. So, if you are in Muncie, that would mean that we would need to transfer the voucher to Muncie Housing Authority after it is referred to us. We will accept referrals from anywhere in the state, but just be aware that, for anywhere in the COC balance the state, but just be aware that once someone is referred to us, they may need to be transferred to another housing authority. As I mentioned, our only eligibility criteria are 50% AMI income limit, not subject to the National Sex Offender Registry, and then the manufacturing and federally assisted housing. Those are the HUD minimum requirements. But when we port them to another housing authority, they may have additional eligibility criteria. So they may look at convictions over the last 5 years for felonies or violent offenses, or they may look at previous debts owed to public housing authorities. So just something to make sure that the household is aware of before they start the moving out process, that if they are going to lease up in another housing authority's jurisdiction, there may be some eligibility criteria beyond what IHPA has that could prevent them from ultimately utilizing that voucher in that jurisdiction. Now they could always choose to instead lease up in our jurisdiction, but that might not be in the same community they had. But plan on leasing up in. And I'll follow up this map real quick, just so you can see our jurisdictional. Okay, so this map is our jurisdiction. We cover all the counties that are in color. And the PowerPoint will be available, so you can pull this up and look more closely at it. And then this list here is all the other public housing authorities in the state. The one in red, you do not have to worry about because those are public housing only, so we still cover with our tenant-based voucher program. But the ones in black all have cities with their own housing authority that cover that area locally. And then additionally, just the way we administer our program, the color codes are for the CAT agencies that we work with around the state. So if they are leasing up in IG's jurisdiction, we will transfer the voucher to one of the CAT agencies that we subcontract with, and then that's where their caseworker will be located for the voucher. And they will work with that caseworker on their new eviction paperwork, finding a unit, getting leased up, as well as their annual reexaminations once they have leased up. And then that agency will also conduct the initial inspection for the unit that they identified. Okay, and then, so that was the referral process for PSA units. For the Housing First program, similar to COC, PSH, the grantee will identify a tenant who would like to move on from Housing First. And then in this case, the grantee would need to commit to working with the tenant to, provide housing and service assistance for the voucher, work with them to provide those services, do everything they can to make sure that that tenant would be successful in getting leased up with the voucher. Then the Housing First specific paperwork, so the documentation of how the CTI model was followed, the mainstream benefits that they applied for and been accepted or denied for, SNAP benefits, et cetera, would be submitted to they support housing analysts. And they would confirm that they are moving on eligibility. They are eligible for the moving on voucher according to the Housing First criteria. And at that point, the grantee would work with the tenant to complete the full moving on voucher referral packet, submit it to Section 8 at IHA.in.gov, and from there it's the same process as with a PSHCOC moving on voucher. All right, cool. So before I get into the exact referral packet and all the documentation that you're going to need to make a referral, are there any additional questions? Okay, so the first page of the referral packet is going to be decided. This has the HVH, so moving on. As I mentioned, referral packets are all very similar. The first page of the referral packet is going to be the cover letter. In that cover letter, we need it needs to have the letterhead of the referring agency. And then it also has a checklist of all the other pages that need to be included in the referral packet. Just to help you when you're making your referral, making sure that you have all the paperwork that you need for the referral. And then it also needs to include in it somewhere a sentence stating that you are committed to, if it's a COCPSH unit, allowing the tenant to stay in that unit until they've actually identified new housing. Or if you are a housing first grantee or referee housing grantee, committing to assisting in their housing search and providing those housing navigation services. Then those referrals should be made about 4 months prior to their current either lease ending or housing assistance ending, which based on the data we have and how long it typically takes households to get leased up once receiving a voucher should give them enough time to identify a new unit prior to their lease ending. If they are a housing first or direct housing recipient and they are planning and the landlord has agreed to let them to stay in their current unit and just transition the rental assistance search, we understand that they may not need those full 4 months. And just let us know in those situations. But we still expect that, I don't know, that they will be referred to. All right, so the main part of your referral packet is the TIF or tenant information form. This is a 4-page form that gets really all the information for the household. The first part of this is just going to be the contact information and kind of biographical demographic information for the household. Please work with the household to make sure it's printed clearly so that we can transcribe this into our software. And then additionally, if this differs from the household in HMIS, let us know. So if it's a situation where the whole household is not being referred, perhaps one of them is moving out prior to referral or something like that, just let us know. We will cross check it with HMIS to make sure there's nothing weird going on and that things are being reported correctly both to us and to HMIS. And then page 2 goes into asset information and then income information, household expenses. For asset information, if they have any bank accounts, any life insurance policies, anything like that, you'll just need to submit the supporting documentation with it, so bank statements, etc. The way HCD calculates income from assets is it's essentially not eligible. The passbook rate that's used to calculate that income is very low, so the assets that they have won't actually affect their eligibility, but we're still required to collect that information, so please report it. And then part 3 is the income information. Based on what's reported on this page will allow us to know what documentation we need to collect for that income. If it's just mainstream benefits, that's really easy. Just submit their SSI or SSDI award letter. If they're receiving SNAP, they can report it on this page. They do not need to submit any documentation for it. SNAP is excluded from income in voucher programs, so we don't need to have the supporting documentation. Then obviously they have earned income, pay stubs. If they're just starting a job, that offer letter, kind of an estimate of how many hours they'll be working, so that we can do an income calculation based on that. And then finally, part 4 is household expenses. This is largely for medical expenses so that we can deduct those expenses from their adjusted income when calculating their tenant portion of rent on the program. And for that, every expense needs to have documentation if it's going to be deducted from their income. So for medical deductions, that typically would be a printout for, if they get their pharmacy, CVS or Walgreens, you can just go there and get a printout and all their costs in the last year, something like that, or receipts for each individual expense movement set. The Second is for citizenship. So this is the declaration of citizenship. It's a HUD form that they will need to fill out for all household members. As far as eligibility for citizenship, non-citizens can be eligible for the voucher program. But it depends on what their exact residency status is. And then if there is a non-citizen in the household, they can just not contest their citizenship. They can still be in the household, but the household assistance will be prorated for that member. So if there's 4 members of the household, one of them is not citizen, they would receive 75% of what they normally would receive in the program, because only 2 out of the 4 members are citizens. And then additionally, as far as what non-citizen residency status is qualified, there's a lot of different residency statuses, and there's not really clear guidance from HUD on which ones qualify and which ones don't. But there is a system that we submit to, and then we get an eligibility determination back. It is a federal system. If someone's worried about having that information submitted to a federal system, they do confirm that no action will be taken or anything, but they can always just not contest their eligibility status, and then it will be prorated assistance. The second form in the packet will be the release of information and the notice of release of information. This just is required by all HCP participants so that we can do the correct reporting to HUD, that we include their voucher, as well as run criminal background checks. Not very interesting. The next one is the criminal history. So there's this is kind of discrimination of those information. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if they are reporting to another housing authority, they may have additional criminal requirements beyond what we have. The next page in the packet is the debts owed packet. So there is a federal system database that we look at for any debts owed to housing authorities. So it's not only if they owe debt to our housing authority, but also other housing authorities that could be denied in the program. We will not deny them for that reason, but if they're reporting to another housing authority, they likely will deny them if they have any debts owed to another housing authority. The one thing I'll say on that is most housing authorities will still accept someone with a debt owed if they can show that they're in good standing with the housing authority that they have debt with. So typically that would mean that they can't reach out to that housing authority and enter into a repayment agreement with them, have an active repayment agreement with that housing authority that they are in good standing with. That information isn't entered into the federal system, so they would need to provide documentation of their good standing to the housing authority. Most likely, they would initially be denied, and then if the listed reason was that they have debt owed with another housing authority, they could appeal that denial and provide documentation that they are in good standing with that housing authority based on an active repayment agreement. The next page of the referral packet may or may not be included in our referral, depending on the household. It is for reasonable accommodations. So if the household is disabled and need a reasonable accommodation, this would be the form that they would use to request that. This could be for their initial referral, so it may be that they need to have a briefing in person. They can't have an over the phone briefing, or it could be for during the housing search if they need, for example, a first floor unit, and we know that sometimes those we challenge from, they can request an increase in the payment standard, which could increase the maximum subsidy that they're eligible for by up to 10%. So depending on exact housing authority they're leasing with, payment standards are either set at 100% FMR or up to 110% FMR. With a reasonable accommodation, the payment standard could be set at 120% fair market rent, and that would allow for their maximum subsidy to be 120% of fair market rent. The next page is the alternate contact form. If the service provider or property manager is going to be working closely with this household on the voucher process, I would recommend that they be listed as an alternate contact. so that we can provide them information on the search or work with them directly during the housing search. We definitely encourage that they at least have someone listed here, but we have all the time where if they don't, and we can't get a hold of them, perhaps we need one more piece of verification to prove it, can't get a hold of them, it's just challenging, it's a lot easier if they do have someone else, whether it's a property manager, a family member, or a service provider, that we can also reach out to and work with them on getting their referral packet and any additional documentation. And then also there's a checklist of reasons that we can contact that person for. I would recommend they just check all the boxes. It's for annual certifications, inspections, kind of anything in the process that we may need to reach out to them for. The next part of the referral packet is for EID. This is the federal system used to verify income. The one note on this page is the signature line is kind of hidden in the corner, so just make sure it gets overlooked a lot, make sure when you're going through the packet that it does get signed. It's just about the system and that confirming you have permission to look into that system to verify their income based on that federal database. The income that's always in there is federal benefits, but if some earned income is also in there, so make sure they're on their tip form reporting all the income that they have, because if they don't, and you find it in there, it's going to be listed as unreported income, and if they've been receiving subsidy based on unreported income, they may have to repay some subsidy. The next page in that is the zero income form. I would expect that not many folks who are being referred from moving on are zero income at that point. Hopefully they've been in the PSH or housing first refugee housing program for long enough that they either have special benefits through SSI or SSDI, or they have earned income at that point. But if you do have a household who is zero income, perhaps they just have a job or something along those lines, this form needs to be filled out, and additionally, it's gonna have to be filled out every 90 days until they have income again. That's a HUD requirement. And it just goes through one, making sure they may think of themselves as zero income, but if they are getting a family member that's paying their phone bill every month, HUD considers that income or something along those lines. So it's kind of a questionnaire to make sure that there's not income that they don't think of as income, that the program considers income. So that we can include that in their income calculation. They ask for how they're paying for things, so rent and utilities is on there, toiletries, kind of hygiene products, as well as food, etc. Find out how they're paying for those things so that we can evaluate whether any of those ways they're paying for it actually is considered income by HUD and it's to be reported as such. Or if they, truly have zero income, then we'll enter them as a zero income household, but they'll have to go as certification now every 3 months. All right, that is the entire referral packet. I can take any questions. I think we'll probably get done a little bit early. But there's my contact information as well. So if anyone has specific questions, especially about an individual case, you can reach out to me and I can give you guidance on that. And then additionally, we are accepting moving on referrals now. So you can immediately start referring people from their properties. And we do still have about 45 referrals left this year. So there's plenty available, but they may go fast. So if you have tenants that you believe would be a good candidate for the program, please get those referrals in. And we will work with you on getting them a voucher. It's the calendar year. Yeah. So that is our fiscal year for our HDB program. So
How many did you pick up?
we have about 45 out of the 50.
And are you the point contact for everything, or was it?
For direct questions, reach out to me for the referral packet, send it to our generic section 8 at IGCA. Yeah. Yes.
We need to submit the referrals forms, how long does it take to get a call?
Yeah, it typically takes, I mean, it depends on if we have all verification and everything we need in the referral packet, but if everything's there, we'll approve them within 10 business days and then assign it to a caseworker if they are staying within IGA jurisdiction. If they're not staying within IGA jurisdiction, we'll report them to the housing authority where they are released of. If they're staying within our jurisdiction, usually the caseworker will get those briefings scheduled pretty quickly. They'll reach out and then, it's just a matter of when they can find the time that works for both them and the recipient to get a briefing scheduled. That briefing is also when the voucher is issued and they receive the RTA form, which is the request for tenancy approval. That's the form that they provide to the property manager when they are hoping to lease a unit. That property manager or landlord fills out to give us the information we need to know that unit's going to be eligible and also the schedule of inspection. If they are reporting to another housing authority, some housing authorities are a lot slower in getting briefing scheduled. Sure, you all are familiar with that. So, that's why we really want a full 4 months, is so that if they're reporting to another housing authority, they have plenty of time. Some housing authorities take to 60 days to get that initial briefing scheduled, and then you're only looking at 2 months of having the voucher to search for a unit. What is that?
Say that, if we try to encourage people to search for housing where they want to live, but they change their mind and work somewhere else or transfer somewhere else within our jurisdiction, we want to know that within the first 30 days, 16 months, so days out. Or that's my comment.
Well, again,
They still get the
it's
same.
generally true. Yeah, we do understand that a lot of folks, the housing authority jurisdictions don't necessarily line up with where the area that someone is searching in, so especially if they're in, say, looking in like Lake County, there's 4 different housing authorities, East Chicago, Hammond, Gary, and ourselves. And they may want to lease up, just kind of generally in Lake County, and they might not know exactly what housing authority they want to search with. So, we may initially say, let's start out with us, and then if you find a unit in another housing authority, we'll try to quickly get that transferred to that housing authority so we can lease up. But it can be challenging sometimes because those jurisdictions don't necessarily make sense. If you're just searching for a unit, you wouldn't say all live on this side of the street, but not this other side. You just search in that area.
That's the question, what's the difference in this program? If I work at public support housing, and after 1 year, they go from the project to the same things. So what's the difference?
So this is not to hear that. So with COC,
Okay.
yeah, so with COC PSA,
I can get somebody that's not had a household, right? They need to be in a driver, right?
you may be able to, and there's just some extra staff.
Okay.
That's because of HED rules for PBD and, how if you already have a voucher, without changing the head of household, you can't just issue a voucher to the rest of the family. Where I think this program, since there's no initial voucher, when the voucher is issued, we can make whoever in that household, the head of household, for that voucher. Any questions or thoughts? Well, we talked about 15 minutes of the session, so I will stick around if anyone has any questions. And I will talk to Rachel Gunn, making sure that Rapid Housing Guidance is going to get posted soon. I'm sure they will have Liz include that in the newsletter or something, and that will be on our website. So if you are a Rapid Housing grantee, keep an eye out for that guidance on Rapid Housing eligibility. But again, the main target population for these vouchers are COC PSH residents. All right.